Celebrate Zaxby's birthday with half off handcrafted.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing well on this morning, afternoon, or night, based on wherever you're tuning in from, or based on whatever you catch the replay. So, today was day 12 of the Sean P. Diddy Combs trial. The United States versus Sean P. Diddy Combs is well underway, and we are at day 10. Today, we received testimony. I want to highlight Capricorn Clark. I don't believe that she's the only individual that testified today, but she came through with what a lot of people are calling bombshell testimony. So, I want to kind of get into, well, first, before I continue, let me say to all of my veterans and to my oldest daughter, thank you so much for your service. I appreciate you more than you know. It is a definite selfless act when you decide to serve your country and actually go into battle unknowing, not really knowing what will happen, what the outcome may be. And just, it's really a selfless act. So if you haven't heard it already, thank you for your service. It is greatly appreciated. So the court resumed today. They were off yesterday in observance of the holiday. And let me see. I'm trying to see if Capricorn is the only person that testified today. It looks like she may be. Hold on. Let me retry. Okay, there we go. I want to make sure that she is not the only person. It looks like they had her on the stand all day today. Yeah, it looks like Capricorn was the only person. So before we get into her testimony, guys, I think things are really heating up in this case. This is the third week of testimony. And it's really starting to get interesting overall because the government seems to be creating a pattern of behavior as it relates to Diddy. The pattern of behavior is inclusive of physical abuse, um, mental abuse, um, seems like, like there's just so much that's going on in this case. It's unreal because usually when you have a job or you get a job, it's usually just that, a job. So, what I want to do is go ahead and hop into, thank you. Hey, baby. Hey, Bush babies. I see you. All right. So, before we hop into her testimony, I want to just say a few key items or key points that I've noted as far as what has the government done so far to prove or even to present their case to the jury. Okay. They've shown messages between Cassie and Kid Cudi about the car situation, his car being blown up. And then lo and behold, that actually happened by way of a Molotov cocktail. In the court of law, you can assert facts with circumstantial evidence. A lot of people are looking for like that, smoking gun, so to speak. They're looking for that smoking gun. And sometimes cases can be built on actual evidence as well as circumstantial. Basically, if it's raining outside and you get wet while going into a building, you can believe that it's raining outside, right? One of the most popular admonishments, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's usually a part of jury instructions, where the jury is advised that if someone comes into the courtroom and they are wet and they're carrying a wet umbrella, you can actually automatically believe that it's raining outside. So while they don't have actual direct evidence to tie Sean P. Diddy Combs to the car bombing of Kid Cudi's car, they have the documentation of the text messages between Cudi and Cassie. And that is what we call circumstantial evidence. So the jury can certainly use it during their deliberations to make a decision. Now, arson is definitely one of the acts that are listed in their indictment. And remember, Diddy himself made those threats. And also, there was also a vague apology made to Kid Cudi regarding that incident, which further solidifies the prosecution's argument and position. Now, the key allegations from the government in this case is that Diddy was in the leadership role of this criminal enterprise. The prosecution asserts that Combs headed a criminal organization referred to as Combs Enterprise, which included his businesses such as Bad Boy Entertainment and staff members. His enterprise allegedly engaged in activities including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, battery, and obstruction of justice. The organization purportedly used violence threats and abuse to maintain control and silence from its victims. The second key point in allegation are the FOs and the sexual exploitation. A control element of the indictment involves events termed FOs, described as elaborate drug-fueled sexual encounters orchestrated by Diddy himself. Victims were allegedly coerced or drugged into participating with some of these sessions lasting days. Combs is also accused of recording these encounters and using the footage to blackmail participants. During the raids on his properties, authorities reportedly seized supplies associated with these events, including over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and various drugs. The next key allegation and point in this case is the physical abuse and intimidation factor. The indictment details numerous instances of physical abuse by Diddy, including striking, kicking, and dragging victims. Of course, we know of the most notable, which was actually captured on hotel surveillance footage on camera, which showed Diddy assaulting his then girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, in 2016. Additionally, Combs is accused of using pum-pums to intimidate victims and witnesses, and with law enforcement seizing multiple pum-pums during property searches. The next would be involvement of employees and associates, Combs' staff, including assistants and security personnel, and they are alleged to have facilitated his criminal activities. Their roles included organizing FOs, procuring drugs, and covering instances of abuse. Witnesses have so far testified that employees were complicit in maintaining the operations of the alleged criminal activity. Testimony from Capricorn Clark, former assistant. Capricorn has provided testimony recounting experiences of threats, coercion, and abuse during her employment. So the government, I think at this point, is kind of, they're playing chess, not checkers. They're laying out the case very methodically, but they're being extremely deliberate with the lineup of witnesses as well as the lineup of their evidence. Now, what has the defense done well so far, or what have they done to defend their client, Sean P. Diddy Combs? I think one of the smartest things that they've done so far is using Cassie's own words against her. They presented text messages to the contrary of what she's saying now. I don't know how helpful or how powerful it will be as it relates to counteracting the government's evidence, because the government also brought in an expert witness to explain DV survivors and their behaviors. So it just depends on the jury and their overall mindset. And if they took in what that expert had to say. Hey, Lisa says what? So I like the fact also that the defense are using for cross examination of the victims, they're doing it with women. If you notice, whenever there's a victim on the stand, um, they are having the younger female attorneys approach that, which is definitely a good look because if they had used Mark Agnifilo, that wouldn't have gone over well, I don't think, with the jury. An older man like pressing a victim over their traumatic experiences, I don't think it would have went over well with the jury. Um, the defense did challenge the application of RICO. They argued that the prosecution used use of the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act is an overreach. They contend that the case is built on uncharged allegations and consequential relationships, asserting that the government's portrayal of Diddy's business and personal life as a criminal enterprise is unfounded. The next thing that his defense has done, which, they're doing their job, that's what he hired them for. Diddy has formed the ultimate dream team as far as attorneys available at this moment in time. So they contested the admissibility of certain testimonies. Combs's legal team has moved to exclude specific testimonies they deem speculative or prejudicial. For instance, they requested the removal of rapper Kid Cudi's account of his Porsche being destroyed by a Molotov cocktail, arguing it lacks, my apologies, it lacks direct evidence linking Diddy to the incident. And it's smart for them to fight that. However, there still was that documented threat in the email and or text messages between Kid Cudi and Cassie. But again, they're doing their due diligence. The defense has also asserted racial bias in the prosecution. The defense has alleged that the prosecution is racially motivated, describing it as a takedown of another successful Black man. They argue that Diddy is being targeted differently than white defendants in similar circumstances. However, the presiding judge rejected this claim, stating there was no evidence of discrimination and or affect based on race, effect based on race. They've also addressed alleged leaks and media influences. Combs's attorneys have accused federal agencies of leaking sensitive materials, including a 2016 hotel surveillance video showing Combs assaulting his then girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura. Of course, we all know that video was shared on CNN prior to the beginning of this trial. They argue that such leaks have tainted the jury pool and compromised the fairness of the trial. They've contested evidence handling. The defense has raised concerns about the handling of uh, potentially privileged materials seized during the raids. They argue that procedural missteps, such as um, photographing and returning documents without proper notification, could impact the integrity of the case. The defense is also opposed to his detention. As you know, they've sought bail multiple times. However, each time that they have, you know, made that effort, it has been denied. So I just wanted to like point out what the prosecution has done thus far as this trial continues, and also highlight some of what the defense has done to combat, if you would, the defense's stance. I'm sorry, the government's stance on, the issue at hand. So now let's go ahead and get into Capricorn Clark's full testimony from today. Let's see. Hold on, guys. I gotta get here we go. I had it up and then it just went away because I took too long to start. Welcome, welcome, guys. Please be sure to hit that like button on your way in. I greatly appreciate that. Replay gang, I'm also talking to you. And if you are not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing today. Be sure to set your notifications to all so that you're notified when I go live or add new content. Let's see. Hold on. All right. We're going to get started with Capricorn Clark's full testimony from today.
For reading of the Capricorn Clark testimony from the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Source: courtroom reporter at
Okay,
Inner City
so
Press
let's
on
get into
X.com.
it.
All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty. Listen at your own discretion.
The government calls Capricorn Clark. Where did you grow up?
Born in San Francisco, moved to LA, worked for Def Jam, then Death Row Records, a late 90s gangster rap label.
What was your relation to Mr. Knight?
He is the father of my friend's child.
Then you worked for Sean Combs?
Yes, he is over there in a blue sweater. I worked for him from 2004 to 2012.
Were you kidnapped?
Yes.
When did you first meet Mr. Combs?
When I moved to NYC in 2002. We were super platonic friends. A headhunter said I should work for him as a personal assistant. I did, until 2006.
Your duties?
Shadow him from Wake Up.
Then what?
Head of women's for Sean Jean.
How long?
A year. Then global brand director for Sean Combs. Name and likeness due diligence to grow the brand. Then I was terminated until 2016 for Cassandra Ventura.
Did you work in this building?
Yes, we moved there in 2005.
Your first day, where did Mr. Combs take you?
Central Park, after dark, along with Uncle Paulie. He looked like a linebacker.
Does this photo look like him?
No, he doesn't have on the blackout shades he wore all the time.
What did Mr. Combs tell you in the park?
That since I'd worked for Mr. Knight, if anything happened, he might have to kill me.
At this moment, the defense objected, but was overruled.
How did you take it?
Seriously, it had gravitas.
How did you react?
I said, I didn't have anything to do with that stuff.
At this moment, the defense objected and was sustained.
What was Paulie's role?
All aspects of Mr. Combs' movements to keep him safe. There were also D-Rock, Roger Bonds, and Ruben.
Who's D-Rock?
A good friend of Biggie Smalls, running back type body.
Did you ever observe Mr. Combs with a gun?
Yes, in my home.
And did he talk about it?
He, Mr. Combs.
They have brought up D-Rock during every single testimony, with the exception of the expert witness and the experienced guys and the hotel surveillance gentleman. D-Rock's name has been coming up with all of the victims' testimony. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was also subpoenaed and had to testify in this case. I don't know if he's being subpoenaed for the government or for the defense.
Told Chris Lighty he had a gun. He had a problem with 50 Cent.
Were you ever accused of stealing?
Yes, jewelry. It had been given to me. It was on loan.
It went missing?
Yes.
What did you do?
From Teterboro, I called 1440 and told them to lock it down.
What did Uncle Paulie do?
He questioned me 3 hours.
You went home?
To Queens, yes, with Uncle Paulie. He searched my house.
Where did Uncle Paulie take you?
1710 Broadway. It was dilapidated. It was being fixed up, but I didn't know that. Uncle Paulie took me to the 6th floor. The door was locked behind us. There was a 6-foot folding table and a heavy-set man.
Can you describe him?
5 of me. 2 linebackers. He was chain smoking.
Did Uncle Paulie stay?
No, intermittently he came back.
What did the heavyset man say?
I was there to take a lie detector test.
What did he say would happen if you failed the lie detector test?
That they would throw me in the East River.
At this moment, the defense objected and then asked for a sidebar. Then they continued.
Now that right there, first of all, even with the objection, you have to bear in mind that the jury is hearing all of this testimony. So the objection was sustained, which means that the prosecution needs to move on. Her response will be stricken from the record. However, you can't unhear that she would be thrown into the East River.
What was his demeanor?
Very serious. I was terrified.
Did you want to be taking the test?
No, I was afraid.
How was the test?
Wires on you and they question you. Did I steal?
Did he tell you the results?
He said to calm down, that he couldn't get a good reading and he might have to throw me in the East River.
Anyone else in the building?
Not to my knowledge.
Could you leave?
No, Paul said no.
What did Paul say at the end?
That he'd come back the next day to figure this out. We started again, another lie detector test in the same location, all day.
Were you free to leave?
No.
How long did this go on?
5 days.
Did you tell anyone where you were?
No, I was just trying to survive it. I worked under an NDA.
At this moment, the defense objected, and the judge sustained it and told the jury to disregard the last answer.
What would you have been doing?
Shadowing Mr. Combs.
What happened after 5 days?
That I could return to work. That Mr. Combs would see me the next week.
Did Mr. Combs ever discuss it with you?
No.
Why did you continue to work with Mr. Combs?
If I left, they'd think I stole.
What were your days like?
From his townhouse at 74th Street and Park in the morning to Daddy's house studio at night.
How much sleep did you get?
On a good day, 4 hours. On a bad day, 2. I got a stress condition.
Okay. I'm pausing there because you heard her. The government asked her, how much sleep did you get? She said on a good day, 4 hours, and on a bad day, 2. She got a stress condition. Remember, the forced labor allegation that the government is making? See, it's the details are there. People who are, saying, well, I don't know what the government is doing. They're not really getting to the point and, bringing out these allegations like I think Ray J said free Diddy. They're not paying attention to all of the details that are being brought out by way of this testimony. And by the way, testimony of a witness is considered evidence. So with Capricorn Clark saying that she was sleep deprived, that's, laying out and or proving the government's allegation.
I was paid $55,000.
Did you get paid overtime?
No, I spoke to the head of HR. She said I was owed $80,000.
How did Mr. Combs respond?
He ripped up the paper.
Would Mr. Combs stay at hotels?
Yes.
With whom?
Kim Porter. Once a week.
What names would he book rooms under?
Frank Black. Frank White.
And the girlfriends?
Jackie Starr.
Where did he stay?
Intercontinental Buckhead in Atlanta. Beverly Hills Hotel in LA.
What were in his bags?
A camera, small bottles of baby oil and lube, cameras, every time.
What would you be doing?
Watching TV, ordering room service, keeping up on sleep. Afterward, I'd sweep the room for anything left behind.
Any damage?
Baby oil.
Okay. Capricorn Clark just said that after each FO, she would sweep the room for any damage, baby oil, anything that, would be of issue. One of the allegations being brought by the government is obstruction of justice and Diddy utilizing his employees to aid him in an effort to cover up his crimes. All right? You guys follow me?
How frequently would Mr. Combs stay in a hotel with Cassandra Ventura in 2008?
Like once a week at L'Hermitage, the London Intercontinental, for several days. The IV drips.
Did he speak to you about his relationship with Ms. Ventura?
Yes, Ms. London was there. Chef Jordan in the other room. He called Cassie over, asked her to walk there. Hand me that. Go back in the other room. She did it.
What did he say?
You won't do that. That's why you don't have a man.
What did you say?
Your mother f***ing right.
Did you observe Mr. Combs obtain
A girlfriend in NY, in LA from One Stop. Molly, ecstasy, delivered to Puff or to me.
Did he ask you to get drugs for him?
Yes, ecstasy.
And in the south of France?
He asked me to get cocaine. I said, for who?
Why?
I wasn't going to do it, given how my mother died.
At this moment, the defense objected and asked for a sidebar. Then they continued.
Who did Mr. Combs say the drugs were for?
He said, not me.
Did you get them?
Yes, through the Spanish security guard. He also got prescription drugs in my name. They were in the toiletry bag I'd carry or security.
What about bulk cash?
Yes, 100,000 euro coming back from Europe.
Where'd he get it?
Club bookings in Europe. He'd keep it, then give it to security, then into his bedroom personal safe. Fighting.
Was Mr. Combs with you?
Yes, at Star Island. He told me, you are not to leave this house. Pharrell Williams was brought in by boat. I returned Mr. Walker to Palm Island. He called.
Okay. So the other point that I want to just share with you guys is that in this case, they are also alleging kidnapping. And a lot of people believe that the charge of kidnapping is dragging someone off to an unknown location and keeping them against their will. But kidnapping can also be interpreted as not allowing an individual to move freely. So there's a lot of people who are, how did he kidnap anybody? These people went with him willingly. She stayed in that place for however, he told her to stay and she did it. That is technically kidnapping. And the thing I continuously say is ignorance of the law does not help you when, the sugar honey iced tea hits the fan.
Called and said, where the FK are you? You can't have a life. One time I asked the chef if there was turkey bacon. She said, no fucking turkey bacon. I said, I hate it here. The chef told Mr. Combs, and he pushed me again and again.
What did he say?
If you hate it here, get the K out of here.
Did you leave your employment?
I did.
But you returned?
As global brand director.
Why?
He was impressed by what I did in the job I'd left for. A couple of albums. He said, you wouldn't have to work directly for me.
What were you doing for Ms. Ventura?
Managing her image. Maximize the optics for her. For Sean Combs, he had final approval on everything.
In LA, where did you live?
A gated community. We had followed Kim Porter there.
Where was Ms. Ventura?
In New York City on West End. She would come to LA and stay with him, or with me, or in a hotel.
Who else was Ms. Ventura seeing?
Scott Muscuddy, Cuddy.
How'd you learn that?
She brought him to my apartment.
What did she say?
She texted me they were going to this public place in LA. I told her it was a bad idea and to delete the text.
Why?
If Mr. Combs learned about Mr. Muscuddy, Mr. Combs paid for my phone and hers. I took Cassie to Best Buy to get a burner phone.
When did Mr. Combs return to town?
Not long after. He took Cassie to a hotel, the Cipriani.
And then?
December 22nd, 2011, between 5:30 and 6 a.m. There was banging at my door.
What did you see through the peephole?
A furious puff.
At this moment, the defense objected, and the judge told the prosecution to ask another question.
What was his movement?
Pacing with something in his hand.
Did you open the door?
I did.
What was he wearing?
Button-down sweater, torn pants, and he was holding a gun. He came into my apartment and said, "Why didn't you tell me? Who is Scott?" I said, "I don't know any Scott."
What did he say?
"We're going to go kick this N-word."
Where was the gun?
In his hand. I said I didn't want to go. He said, "I don't give a what you want. Get dressed."
What concerns did you have?
He'd never come to my house.
Did you try to escape?
No, I got dressed.
Who joined in?
Reuben in the black Escalade, executive class.
Where was Reuben?
Driver's seat. I got in the back seat, right-hand side. Mr. Combs was in the left, next to me. Usually he would have sat in the front, was in his lap.
How long does it take to drive from your home at the time to Cuddy's house in the Hollywood Hills?
If you push it, 15 to 20 minutes.
What did Mr. Combs and Rube do at Cuddy's house?
They went in.
Could you see in?
Yes.
What did you do?
I called Cassie on her burner. I said, "Cat."
Now, the B&E, the breaking and entering, has just been confirmed by Capricorn Clark herself. Remember, during Cassie's testimony, as well as Kid Cudi's testimony, they both discussed the situation of Diddy breaking into his home, locking his dog in the bathroom, and opening up Christmas presents that he had purchased for his family. So now we have a corroborating witness who was actually physically there. I'm telling you guys, the government is definitely laying out this case in what I would consider they're painting a Picasso. They're definitely painting a Picasso here. This is epic. This is epic. And the thing about it is, I don't know if it's because of like social media or the internet or what have you. People, like, we tend to want like that instant gratification of like, what's happened? Just tell me what happened exactly, how it happened and when it happened and how this other stuff. In the judicial system, specifically in the federal courts, they're going to lay it down. They're going to lay brick by brick. And right now, they are laying it down brick by brick. As you guys can see on my thumbnail, I put a chessboard because I honestly feel that the government is currently playing chess. They're not playing checkers.
See, I told her Puff was at Cootie's house. Then I changed her number in my phone to my best friend, Stormy.
What did you hear on the phone?
That Scott was at Cassie's.
When Mr. Combs came back?
He took my phone and called the last number. Then I saw Cootie driving up. Mr. Combs saw my face and said, "There's that N-word right there." We drove off and saw the police driving the other way, toward Cuddy's. Puff was pulling himself together. We stopped at the Key Club and he told me to call Cassie.
What did he tell you to tell Cassie?
That he had me and wouldn't let me go.
How did Ms. Ventura respond?
She said, "Okay, come get me." She was calm.
Who drove you home?
Reuben.
What did Mr. Combs then tell you?
To convince Cuddy not to say that it had been him at his house. I picked up Cassie.
Where did you go?
We went to Cuddy's and tried to convince him not to file a police report.
What did you tell them?
That Puff came to my house with a gun.
What did you tell them he said?
If you tell on him, he'll hurt us all.
What was Mr. Muscotti's reaction?
Mind blown.
At this moment, the defense objected, and it was sustained, and the judge told the jury to disregard the last answer.
What happened at the house?
Again, albeit that the judge sustained the objection, and the judge informed the jury to disregard that you cannot unhear these things. You just cannot unhear. Once it's said, it cannot be unheard.
He was kicking Cassie again and again.
How was Cassie?
In the fetal position. Mr. Combs took her all the way to the street. She was crying silently.
Where was he kicking her?
Her backside.
Where were you?
5 feet away. So was Rube.
What did Mr. Combs say to you?
He said, if you jump in, I'm going to pay you up too.
What did Rube do?
Nothing.
Who did you call?
D-Rock, I told him, tell your brother to stop Puff. He is getting the SG out of her. I called Paulie too. I said he'd take care of it, but Rube did nothing.
What next?
Mr. Combs told me to get the out too. I left on foot.
Could you still see her getting kicked?
Until I went around the bend.
Then who did you call?
Regina Ventura. I told her, he's kicking the shit out of your daughter. I can't call the police, but you can.
Why didn't you call the police?
The mission of the day was to get Cootie, so no calling police.
This email, who is it from?
Cassie. She wrote that he would be releasing tapes about me, and he would have someone else hurt me and Scott Mascuti.
Do you recall if you responded to this?
I don't.
Did law enforcement call you?
The arson investigators. Cootie had given them my name. I hung up on them. I just wanted this over.
What did Mr. Combs say to you?
He said, I should kill you, and I should cut her face.
How many times did Mr. Combs threaten you?
I'd say 50 times. D-Rock was there, just doubling down.
Now, you heard that, right? She said that the government said, how many times did Mr. Combs threaten you? She would say like 50 times. That's a part of their allegations. And she again mentions D-Rock.
On whatever Puff was saying in the moment.
Who is Harv Pierre?
The president of Bad Boy Records. I told him Puff had kidnapped me.
What did Harv Pierre tell you?
He said, that's crazy, but it's going to be okay. I got a termination notice. I was accused of not properly putting in for the vacation I was on.
Had you put in?
Yes, to Harv Pierre.
Did you lose benefits?
All of them. Health, 401k, my house and car.
What did Mr. Combs say?
That I would never work again, that he would make me myself.
Did you get a job offer?
I did, but it fell through. I couldn't get a job.
Did you settle with Mr. Combs?
In October 2012.
At this moment, the defense objected, and then they asked if he can approach, and they had a sidebar. Then they continued.
Aside from that settlement agreement, do you have any other pending litigation against Mr. Combs?
No.
Did you go back to work for him?
2016, no one else would hire me. Cassie had a new record deal with Epic.
Who did you have to get approvals from?
Sean Combs. Cassie was taking more drugs.
Was she still dating Mr. Combs?
Yes.
In December 2023, why did you retain an attorney?
I was traumatized by Cassie's civil complaint. Her complaint did not reference me. I reached out to Mr. Combs and said, I want my life back. You kidnapped me.
At this moment, the defense objected, but was overruled.
Was there a discussion of you working for Mr. Combs again?
Yes, as chief of staff.
When did you last speak with Ms. Ventura?
2018.
And Mr. Mascuti?
2012.
No further questions.
At this moment, it was time for the cross-examination.
Okay, so guys, the defense is up to bat. And there's a lot that the government pulled out in their direct examination. Now, if you guys are new here, I assign a point each day to either side of the argument, whether it be the government or the defense. Right now, the government, in my opinion, is at 5 points and the defense is at 1. And we are at day 10. So that just basically means the other 4 days, no one's argument really was, in my opinion, worthy of a point. Or they had like the day of the expert witness, I didn't really feel that it was worthy of a point or anything, because She just basically spoke in general terms. She hadn't evaluated Cassie and or Diddy. So I was just like, I can't really assign a point today. So right now we're at day 10 and I've only given out 6 points. But the government, in my opinion, is leading. So let's see how the defense handles Capricorn Clark's testimony on direct.
We met in April 2024. You had a lawyer, Brian Friedman.
Yes.
You wanted to come back and work with Mr. Combs, right?
We discussed it. Yes.
You saw Ms. Geragos taking notes.
Yes.
You said you didn't think Cassie was good for Mr. Combs. Why?
I just thought they were toxic.
Tell me about when you were in NY.
I was in the Bronx. I hated it. It was 2002. I met Jeanette, then Mr. Combs. In 2001 was the World Trade Center thing. Then I met Mr. Combs.
He wasn't doing drugs, right?
He did ecstasy in Daddy House.
But it got worse.
Yes.
You authorized Mr. Freeman to seek a job for you?
It was all very procedural, lawyer to lawyer.
But you were told you couldn't be given a job in the middle of the investigation?
I don't remember that.
Read this and let me know when you're done. Do you remember saying you had the biggest crush on him?
At this moment, the prosecution objected on the grounds of 403. Then the judge asked the defense, and the defense said, state of mind. And the prosecution answered with, it's offering the truth. The defense said, we had a stipulation on this. Then they had a sidebar, then continued.
You called him Chalk for chocolate?
I did.
You started with Def Jam, Run DMC?
I don't go back that far. I'm more Foxy Brown, Redline, Jay-Z.
So it's very interesting that the defense is pointing out that Capricorn Clark was a little sweet on Diddy at the time and had somewhat of a cute nickname for him. She called him Chark, short for chocolate.
So how did you come to work for Mr. Combs?
I put my resume on Monster. After the World Trade Center thing, he said, you'd work for me? I was like, maybe. He was acting on Broadway and Raisin in the Sun. I was impressed.
He had a major part?
He was a star. Then I shadowed him on the Vote or Die campaign. My job was to get the t-shirts on the celebrities and into the photo shoots. I'd call them and say, Puff wanted them to come.
And they came?
They did.
How long before the jewelry missing thing?
It was about 4 months. On the 4th of July, he threw a white party at his home on the Hamptons that year with Vote or Die.
When did the jewels missing happen?
After July 4th. The jewels were still on loan from Jacob the jeweler.
Who else got lie detector?
Mike B., his stylist. He too had gone to street level of 1440 for manicures. The lie detector test was the next day.
You never told HR?
No, I got fired for 3 weeks.
How did you get unfired?
I went to work on his 35th birthday at Cipriani to do the celebrity list. I came back.
2004 to 2006.
Not all.
As personal assistant?
Then liaison. I was making $65,000 for Combs, then $90 at Jive.
Why'd you come back to...
She was getting $65,000 a year. That's just, I don't know. Hey, Jasmine, how are you? Hey, Libby Lou. Welcome, Jasmine. I hope you're already subscribed. If you're not, please consider subscribing today. Be sure to set your notifications to all so that you're notified when I go live or add new content. But to me, 65K back then, that wasn't a whole lot of money. I mean, maybe it was a lot to her and the exposure, as well as being a part of his organization was, you know, something to like build her resume. But with him being as, you know, rich as he was, I would have thought that these people would have been making, you know, 100K plus a year.
Combs.
I had gotten top records for R. Kelly. Mr. Combs said he was impressed, asked me to come back for Sean Jean for women. I think I was a really good employee for him.
He told you you were awesome?
He did not use that word.
You worked hard for him?
I did.
Others worked hard too, right?
Not as hard as me. I did learn a lot from Mr. Combs. He broke that glass ceiling for us Black people in the business world.
Do you need a minute?
No, it's just complicated.
At this moment, they took a break, then continued.
When you went into the park, it was to Tavern on the Green.
We parked there. Earlier in the day in the park, we ran into Nas.
When you say he had Ms. Ventura spin, who was there? Let me show you what you said. You said Lorianne Gibson was there?
They misheard me.
When did you first meet Cassie Ventura?
I met her with Ryan Leslie.
Why did you not get along with Cassie sometimes?
In 2008, she got more bravado being his girlfriend the longer it lasted. She thought I was being paid to help her.
At this moment, the prosecution.
I feel like Capricorn, Clark, and, please understand when I say this, but I think that she was a bit envious of the fact that Diddy and Cassie had a relationship. Because if she was there to fulfill her position, it just sounds a little catty to me. I don't know. It sounds just a little catty to me from the way that she describes that, Cassie kind of was feeling herself because she was in a relationship with Diddy. So she felt like she was there to take care of her needs. And I mean, I'm almost certain that that's actually what she was there for.
Was there? Let me show you what you said. You said Lorianne Gibson was there?
They misheard me.
When did you first meet Cassie Ventura?
I met her with Ryan Leslie.
Why did you not get along with Cassie sometimes?
In 2008, she got more bravado being his girlfriend the longer it lasted. She thought I was being paid to help her.
At this moment, the prosecution objected, and the judge sustained it and told the defense to re-ask it.
What did you see?
She went from being a sweet model to being a feisty girlfriend.
Do you think she was talented?
She had talent and was very beautiful.
But not talented?
She was not. I have good taste. Talented to me is Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. Cassie, she was more of a studio musician. She needed things equalized.
See, that's what I'm talking about. She's saying that Cassie was not even that talented. Cassie was extremely talented. Her voice is absolutely beautiful. I would say that she's not, up there with Whitney and all of the greats, but Cassie had great potential.
Did she perform live?
A couple times. Not the greatest.
Was she a hard worker?
At times.
When wasn't she a hard worker?
She preferred to be with her boyfriend. When we moved to LA after Kim had the twins, 2009-ish, I saw her developing more of her relationship with Puff, with Mr. Combs.
He supported her?
Yes, with stylists, other musicians, all the components to make a star.
Did she get more help than others?
Yes, Young Jock and a group from Atlanta. I developed French Montana. I ran into Cassie. She said she had a new deal with Epic. I dressed her like David Bowie. We did a photo shoot at my house. We wrote a mini movie and shot it for the project.
What about Official Girl?
Super cute video.
King of Hearts?
It was fresh. Puff liked it.
Cassie had a green wig?
Yes.
We move to admit this witness.
At this moment, the prosecution said there is a sealing issue.
You don't remember this email?
I don't.
Here in 2012, you are setting up a recording session for Cassie.
Mario Wienans was, for the chairman.
For Mr. Combs?
Yes.
When did you learn Cassie was dating Kid Cudi?
Fall of 2011. I picked her up there.
You believed that after Thanksgiving, Ms. Ventura and Kid Cudi were what?
Getting to know each other.
Why'd you get her a burner phone at Best Buy?
I told her, you cannot do this on your bad boy phone.
How did you know about burner phones?
I grew up in Los Angeles.
In December 2011, Mr. Combs was at an orphanage in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
I heard it was Russia.
How did Mr. Combs get into your building?
I was told the security guard got fired.
What was his name?
Some random security guard.
What did he look like?
Black guy, younger than 35.
What was Mr. Combs doing with the...
He had it in his hand.
He wasn't pointing it at you?
No,
But you told the government he pointed it at you.
it says, or waved it around. That's more correct.
Where did you change into street clothes?
In my closet.
Isn't it true you went so that Mr. Combs wouldn't do something stupid?
No, I went because he said he didn't care. I didn't want to go.
He's a jealous guy?
He has a bad temper.
To the Escalade, did you pass a security guard?
I saw him in his little hut.
Mr. Combs was behind the driver with a gun on his lap. You made a call?
Not then.
Did you look at Kid Cudi's door to see if they could get through it?
I was not really paying attention. I was so in my head, trying to plan my next step. I was praying that Cudi was not in there.
Did Cassie have 2 rooms?
Cudi took her to one room. She had another.
You are 100% that you called and told them Puff had a gun?
Yes, I said it very quickly. I didn't want Puff to see me on the phone.
Did you say that Lauren London was on the phone with you and Cassie and Cudi?
No, only part of the time. I wanted someone to know where I was.
What did you tell her?
I'm scared of mountain lions.
Mountain lions?
I don't know if you know the Hollywood Hills coyotes. Maybe Lauren was on the phone. Maybe. It's such a long time ago.
Are you aware that Lauren and Mr. Combs were friends for years after this?
Yes.
Then you see the Porsche coming up the hill?
Yes. Cudi is in the black Porsche. He stops next to us, then speeds off. We chase him.
Then
He loses us. We turn away. Then we see police pass us.
you go to pick up Cassie and go where?
Cudi's house. There was ADT there.
Then you go to Mr. Combs' house and you say you see Mr. Combs kicking Cassie there and even in the street?
Yes,
You hung up on the fire inspector?
I did.
When you were on vacation, it was with who?
Rihanna.
After you were fired, what job did you get?
I was hired by Chris Lighty to work for 50 Cent.
Here you wrote to Mr. Combs, one day you'll forgive me. Anyway, be well.
Yes.
You wrote on February 28th, 2015, your grace period to be mad at me has surpassed the agreed time, LOL. You wrote that.
Yes, sir.
Please read that out loud.
I wrote, she was never my friend. She wanted me gone, I realized.
Did you think Cassie wanted you gone?
Sorry. This is complicated for me. I felt that I was Puff's protector. I felt I was the only one gone. She was still there, and things were getting worse. I tried to keep professionalism as the goal.
You thought you could be his protector?
It was to move the ball toward the goal, to inspire.
Did it hurt that he would only take you back because Cassie wanted?
Yes, I have no parents. My son is autistic. My stakes are higher, sir.
Can I talk to the government?
At this moment, they had a sidebar and then continued.
Just a few more minutes and we'll get you out today.
Thank you, sir.
You did a lot of great work with Cassie in 2016 and 2017, right?
I believe so.
Cassie had addiction problems?
Yes.
You made a short movie with her?
It was called Love a Loser.
You wrote to him asking for forgiveness?
I wanted my life back, my dream, my competency.
When you met with me, you wanted to work for him, right?
We discussed it.
Nothing further.
At this moment, the redirect began.
How much was Mr. Combs required to pay you?
At this moment, the judge asked for a sidebar. Then they continued.
What happened with the job with Chris Lighty?
He died the day before I was supposed to start. Then at Interscope, it wasn't about a job. They told me to leave Puff alone.
At this moment, the defense objected, and it was sustained.
I was blacklisted.
At this moment, the defense objected, and it was sustained.
Why did you return to work for Mr. Combs?
So people could see I wasn't disposable. At this level of business, he held all the power.
Why did you meet them?
Get my life back.
In the kitchen? Did Mr. Combs carry a...
Yes.
At this moment, the day in court was over, and that was Capricorn Clark's testimony today. Well, what do you think about it? Who do you...
So there is a little bit more. Let's see. We parked there earlier in the day. Yada, yada, yada. Then it says here, after the court was kind of let out, they had further discussion. It says, in their defense submission over the weekend, the defense argued the album covered the album covered was relevant, right? Miss Shapiro, Combs's Alexandra Shapiro, yes. AUSA, Ms. Ventura is topless with her arms crossed. So and then the judge said, let's have Ms. Clark come back. Then Combs's Agnifilo, the direct went more negative than we expected. Their theory is that Ms. Ventura was not permitted to be creative. Judge, in the future, in what you submit overnight. Let's see. I'm reading upside down. Hold on a second. I'm trying to make sure that I'm following the right thread here. Longer break. Da 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 da. Oh, this is still when Capricorn is on the stand. So I'm guessing she was the only person on the stand and the day really did end. Okay, Capricorn. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't look at this beforehand. I didn't look at the updates beforehand, but today I'm going to have to say that I give my point to the government. They presented testimony which shows and proves kidnapping, corroborated the testimony of the arson, corroborated the abuse, corroborated Diddy's access as well as possession of pumes. So, in my opinion, today, the government ended, or they ended up, I should say, in my opinion, in the winner's circle for that 1 point. So now we're at the government with 6 points. I'm away from the computer, guys, so excuse the distance. It sounds like there's a lot of distance. But I feel that the government has definitely earned today's point because of the testimony that they got from Capricorn Clark. They reinforced their allegation of threat, coercion, and they also sewed in the issue of control. Okay. Now, I want you guys to listen to this. This is from Law and Crime. Very interesting breakdown by a reputable attorney. I want you guys to hear what he has to say about the case so far. He is, I believe, he's a well-known attorney. We'll get into that as soon as my YouTube gets caught up. But guys, while we have this moment, please be sure to give us a like. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing today. Be sure to set your notifications to all so that you are notified when we go live or add new content.
January 2012, and this is what they found. That is the rapper's Porsche, damaged from a Molotov cocktail. Yeah, an explosive built with a bottle full of flammable liquid that typically has a cloth inserted to act like a wick. Kid Cudi took the stand last week. He entered the courthouse smoking a cigarette, wearing a leather jacket, and a white t-shirt. Now, Kid Cudi's real name is Scott Miscuddy. He dated Cassandra Ventura, Diddy's ex, the singer known as Cassie, briefly in 2011. He says that Sean Combs did not like that one bit. Ventura and Combs were in an off-again, on-again relationship that started around 2008 and went to 2018. Kid Cudi testified that he thought when he was with Cassie that Ventura and Combs were done. Before we get into how Kid Cudi's car was almost engulfed in flames from a Molotov cocktail, it is important to remind you why an arson case is so important in the government's attempt to convict Sean Combs of racketeering. Arson is one of the predicate offenses under the RICO Act. The government needs to prove at least 2 underlying crimes to be guilty of racketeering conspiracy, and arson is one of those potential underlying crimes. So you can see why a potential burnt Porsche may go a long way in the government's case. The road to that burned Porsche started back when Kid Cudi says he and Ventura first started dating. Kid Cudi testified that he met Cassie at an event in New York in 2008. They also collabed on some music together, and then they briefly dated in 2011. Now, the rapper said, as he understood it, Cassie and, quote, Sean Combs had some problems, and they weren't dating anymore. But then Ventura told Kid Cudi that Diddy had found out they were dating. Now, Kid Cudi said he was confused because he didn't think that Diddy and Cassie were speaking anymore. He then testified that Ventura asked him to pick her up because she was worried that Diddy was going to show up at Kid Cudi's house because Diddy asked for Kid Cudi's address. She gave that address to Diddy. Now, Kid Cudi then said that Cassie was told by a friend, Capricorn Clark, who was also testifying at the trial. She worked as an assistant to Sean Combs, that Diddy and an associate of Diddy were actually inside Kid Cudi's house because she was waiting in the car outside. Now, this was in December 2011. Kid Cudi said that he called Diddy. He confronted him on the phone about an alleged break-in to his house, and Kid Cudi said he then called the police who filed a report. Then we get to January 2012, and this is key. Kid Cudi said he received a call from his dog sitter that his Porsche was on fire. Now, here are some of the images that the government submitted as evidence of the damage that Molotov cocktail left behind. Kid Cudi said he and Ventura were no longer dating at the time of this fire. Kid Cudi testified that he saw the Molotov cocktail in the front seat of the car.
Now, I will be adding pictures of Kid Cudi's car to my community wall, as well as a lot of the other exhibits that have been included in this case. I hopefully will have those all added by tomorrow.
And that police were called to his house. In one of the most candid moments of this trial thus far, when asked what his reaction was to his car being set on fire, Kid Cudi replied,
Hey, Crystal.
"What the?" And you can fill in the blank on that one. Now, Kid Cudi said that he confronted Combs about his car. The two had to sit down to talk about Cassie, the alleged break-in, and what happened to his car. Kid Cudi testified at the end of that meeting. Kid Cudi says he stood up and shook hands with Sean Combs. Quote, as I was shaking his hand, I said, what are we going to do about my car? I made sure to ask him right when our hands were clasped together, where he couldn't run away, and I could look him square in his eye, and he looked right back at me, a very cold stare, and said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, okay. I took my hand from his, and he said, wait, I thought we were cool. Is there a problem? I was like, you said you didn't burn my car, right? You said that's your word? And he said, yeah. And I was like, that's it. Cudi said that Combs was very calm during that part of the conversation. Heading into that line of testimony, Cudi had said that he thought Combs had something to do with the break-in and his car being lit on fire based on issues that they were having off of the relationship that he had had for a short period of time with Cassie. On cross-examination, the defense tried to poke holes in what Kid Cudi was saying and to raise questions about whether Diddy would actually have something to do with this alleged arson. The defense pointed out that no one has been charged in this case, even though police were called and the LAFD investigated. They also said that fingerprints and DNA were taken from the scene. Then the defense said to Kid Cudi, quote, you know that DNA comes back to a female, right? The rapper responded, you said what now? And the defense said the DNA comes back to the female. It seemed like that line caught Kid Cudi off guard. This week, the government filed this motion ahead of the testimony of this LAFD investigator they plan to call to the stand. And it seems like they're trying to get ahead of the argument that the defense is going to make in connection to that burned Porsche, that there's no physical evidence that Combs was there or involved, and it was a female's DNA that was taken from the Molotov cocktail, according to the defense. Now, the government said they plan to call the LAFD fire investigator who responded to Kid Cudi's house in 2012, but they wanted to stop the defense from questioning that investigator about DNA. Part of the motion reads, quote, investigator Jimenez did not collect the swabs personally, did not perform the testing himself, has no personal knowledge regarding the testing other than what is included in his report and the additional materials, and does not understand and cannot explain to what partial female DNA refers. The government also says the evidence doesn't talk about which part of the glass bottle the DNA was collected from. That was the first issue that was brought up in court Tuesday morning, and the judge overruled the objection, meaning the defense will have their chance to ask the LAFD fire investigator about the DNA and bring up what was partially found on that Molotov cocktail to the jury once again. Combs' trial is expected to last another month at least. He is charged with racketeering, sex trafficking by force, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He has pleaded not guilty. Join us now to talk about this part of this case involving Sean Diddy Combs is Nima Rahmani, former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers.
Nima Rahmani, a former federal prosecutor. So he has some really great insights, and I want you guys to pay close attention to what he has to say, because it's quite interesting.
It's great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being here. So there's so much attention on this Porsche that was hit with a Molotov cocktail in 2012. It was Kid Cudi's. And the government's trying to argue that Sean Combs was responsible for this Molotov cocktail. How do you do that?
Well, I think there's a few ways you get there. Obviously, you would love if there was some sort of video or an admission, but you don't have that, right? So what you have is this threat. Cassie testified that Combs threatened to blow up Kid Cudi's car. And lo and behold, a short time thereafter, a Molotov cocktail hit the Porsche and it was burned. So, that's certainly circumstantial evidence that Combs was responsible for it, adding to the episode where, he went into Kid Cudi's home, apparently with a gun. And, you have people like Kid Cudi, Cassie Ventura, and Capricorn Clark who have now testified that Combs was responsible for that incident. Now, obviously, Combs denied it when he was confronted with it, but I think there's certainly enough evidence for the jury to infer that he was responsible for this arson, even if he wasn't the one who directly did it.
How legally, kind of break down how that works, because this case was investigated in 2012. The defense made sure in talking to Kid Cudi that to point out that no one was ever arrested for arson. Sean Combs was never charged for arson. Had this event happen last week and there was evidence of him doing it, he would face a charge, reasonable to believe that he would face a charge of arson. But in this case, it's kind of all this circumstantial evidence to get the jury to believe, if you're the government, that Sean Combs did this. How does that work? Where it's not as if he's ever been charged with arson.
Look, it's circumstantial, but, I'm the prosecutor and Meredith's the former prosecutor. Just because someone isn't charged doesn't mean that they're not guilty of an offense or that offense isn't an element of another crime. I would say the same thing about the 2016 hotel assault. Combs was never charged for that. But some of this is witness intimidation. Some of it is people who are afraid to speak out. And you heard Cassie testify that she just wanted to get away from the Intercontinental Hotel and that Kid Cudi was afraid for his own safety. And he did not want to have anything to do with Combs or even Cassie Ventura for that matter after this arson incident. So, sometimes if you are a prosecutor or law enforcement and you have victims and witnesses who aren't willing to come forward and testify, that can really taint your case. But that doesn't mean that at some other time, like today, during this trial, that crime can't be proven.
And we talked about it a little bit in the lead-in of some of the underlying crimes that then can lead to the racketeering charge that Sean Combs is facing. Just as you're the former prosecutor, why is arson and this Porsche so important when making that argument towards Sean Combs being guilty of racketeering?
Chris, this is why arson is important. There is a way for the government to get to racketeering, even if they can't prove sex trafficking. So let's talk about sex trafficking first. Sex trafficking, of course, requires force, fraud, or coercion. There's an argument that the defense has put out that the freak-offs were consensual. There was no force. There was no coercion. And some of the emails and text messages that Cassie sent Combs do seem to support that argument. Now, obviously, I believe that she was coerced, and this is just part of the psychology of abuse. But one of the biggest questions in the case is, well, why did Cassie stay if she was really forced or she was coerced into participating in these sex acts? The reason arson and kidnapping and prostitution and these other offenses are important is that they are RICO predicate acts. So if the jury believes that it's a criminal enterprise, And even if they don't believe the sex trafficking happened, they can convict Combs on racketeering, for arson, for kidnapping, for drug trafficking, for some of these other crimes that don't have to do with sex trafficking if they do believe that the free calls were consensual.
And let's talk about this DNA, the partial DNA that the defense brought up when they were cross-examining Kid Cudi. And it seemed like he didn't expect that part of the questioning to come up, that the defense claims that there was partial DNA from the Molotov cocktail, or what was left of it, in the car, and it was a female's DNA. What do you make of that?
You know, it's very possible that a female was responsible for the Molotov cocktail, or it was just an innocent female who was there. You know, all along, Combs said that if something happened to Kid Cudi, it would be by someone else's hand. In fact, he said he would be out of the country. This is testimony from Regina Ventura, Cassie's mother, and why she wired the $20,000 to him, because she was afraid for her daughter's safety. And now you have all these individuals saying that, you know, it wasn't necessarily Combs himself who would, you know, do the dirty work, right? It could be a lie detector test. It could be using a security guard. He was running a criminal enterprise. And just like the head of the mob isn't the one who always pulls the trigger for a mob hit, I think the jurors can certainly infer that it was Combs who ordered the arson, even if it wasn't him who did it personally.
And if you're the prosecution, would you be expecting that? Because it seemed like Kid Cudi, everything to that point, he was kind of expecting all the questioning, the questions that he was getting, and he was as cordial and calm as a witness can be with some of the language he had when he was on the stand. But do you think the prosecution knew of that DNA test and that was going to come up?
I don't think they knew about it, because Kid Cudi did seem surprised. He certainly wasn't prepped for it. Well, you know, when you're the defense, you can cross on anything. You don't necessarily have to prove that it was a female's DNA. You can ask, you know, as long as you have a good faith basis to believe that some other DNA was in the car, you can ask a witness about it. That doesn't mean it's true. That doesn't mean we'll ever hear from anyone who conducted the investigation as to whose DNA that was. I mean, again, it's possible, but not necessary. It's certainly something I don't think the government's going to put in, because it wasn't Combs' DNA.
And for the prosecution, now that the judge is allowing the defense, for when this fire investigator takes the stand, they will be able to bring up this DNA, this partial female DNA that they found on it. If you're the prosecution, how do you go about, because I'm sure it's going to come up, and a juror may, you know, you may see a juror start to think, well, maybe Sean Combs isn't responsible for this arson. How do you, as a prosecutor, if you were in their shoes, push back on that and then try to get the jury on track?
I think you got to really talk about the difference between direct and circumstantial evidence. And there's jury instructions on this that really give different examples. And you don't need direct evidence. Circumstantial evidence is entitled to the same weight. So the example that they use in jury instructions is, you know, if you go outside and you see it's raining, you can testify that, you know, it was raining on this particular day. But even if you're inside and someone walks into your house and they're wet and they have an umbrella and they have rain boots, you can reasonably infer that it was raining. And here, given all the evidence, the fact that Combs himself made that threat, that he had the motive to go after Kid Cudi, he threatened to kill him. He said he was going to blow up his car. And the fact that that happened, you can infer that it was Combs who at least ordered it. And again, sometime later, years later, apparently there was some sort of vague apology for what happened as well. So I think all of that, the totality of the circumstances, do give rise to the conclusion that Combs was responsible. You don't need that direct evidence in the case.
When a fire investigator is brought to the stand, and he'll be questioned about the DNA, he didn't do the swabs, the government says, but this is the person who saw the car that day in 2012 in January when he was called to Kid Cudi's house in Los Angeles. What do you expect? What information would the government want from a witness like that?
I think they're going to talk about the accelerant, right, the source of the fire, to prove that, you know, it was indeed a Molotov cocktail, right? That's something that you need an expert to testify to. I don't think, you know, it came out during Kid Cudi's testimony. It's not something that obviously he can opine to, because he's not an expert in fire and what can cause a vehicle or anything like that to catch on fire. So you really do need that testimony from, you know, a fire expert. So that's what I expect that to say.
And now, as I know Capricorn Clark was on the stand today, and she was talking about, saying that she was kidnapped at one point. And then that is also one of those underlying crimes. You have the arson in allegedly with Kid Cudi's car. To this point, how do you feel the government is doing? We still have a long way to go in this trial in proving that racketeering charge.
I think the government is there, and again, it's not your typical racketeering case, right? We talk about the mob, normally you deal with racketeering with cartels or street gangs, but we are seeing them more and more in these sex trafficking cases. Obviously, R. Kelly is the best example, but the NXIVM sex cult case. Look, you have someone that has people working for him, right? That's Sean Combs. So the criminal enterprise doesn't have to be a criminal organization as long as it's a loose association of two or more people and someone's calling the shots. That's what's happening here. You have people that are working for Combs. So, we talked about arson. I think that's proven. But then you have kidnapping. Kidnapping isn't what some people think it is. You don't have to be, snatched off the middle of the street in broad daylight and thrown into a white van. You just have to prevent someone from moving through force or to force someone into a situation using force. So, you have the hotel incident. Well, the fact that you have Combs physically dragging Cassie Ventura in the hallway, not allowing her to leave, that is kidnapping. I mean, we've seen video evidence of kidnapping. Then you have Combs apparently upset with Clark because she didn't tell him about Cassie's relationship with Kid Cudi, and the fact that she called Cassie using a burner phone, warning her and Kid Cudi not to come to the house. And then apparently Combs took Clark to some club and held her there. That's kidnapping. That's evidence of kidnapping. So now you have two kidnapping events. At least we may hear about more. So you're just adding different elements of those RICO predicate acts as the government. I do think they have proven racketeering in this case.
What more would you need to see if you were a juror at this point from the government? If a juror is maybe at this point like, okay, I've heard this, but we still have several weeks to go, where the prosecution's going to lay out its case, where do you think it's going to go next?
What I would love to see if I were a juror in this case, or if I were prosecuting this case, are more videos. And apparently Combs took video of these freak-offs for his own sexual pleasure and to maintain control over the victims. If those videos exist, I would want to see them because video is the best evidence. And we know it's the best evidence because this case was all about that hotel surveillance video, both before the trial, during jury selection, and during the trial. That's what the government started with. Video doesn't lie, Chris. Witnesses can lie. Some of these witnesses are disgruntled exes, allegedly, maybe disgruntled employees, allegedly. Some of them have filed civil lawsuits. So they can potentially be biased. I'm not saying I agree with it, but this is the argument the defense is making. But video evidence, it doesn't lie. And apparently, there's video from Combs' homes in LA and Miami. He allegedly had videos all throughout the house, hidden cameras. So to the extent that those videos exist, that's what I would want to see if I were a juror in this case.
And we talked about the racketeering charge, and you believe at this point that the government's there. How about its sex trafficking at this point? I mean, there's been some very compelling testimony from what we've been told from our reporter in the courtroom. Just the emotion of Cassie's testimony was something that was incredibly emotional. At this point, is the government there as well on that charge?
Chris, I do believe the government is there. Maybe this is the former prosecutor in me, but sex trafficking, again, it's not human trafficking, right? There is sex that's consensual between adults. There's non-consensual sex that involves force, fraud, or coercion. There has to be a commercial element, and we know there is because of the payment to the sex workers. And of course, the commercial element doesn't even have to be financial. It has to be just some benefit to individuals involved. And then there has to be an interstate component, which again, we know there is because people were flown from different states to participate in these sex acts. So really sex trafficking comes down to that force or coercion. Do you believe that Cassie was coerced? I do, because someone that, takes so many drugs that she throws up during the freak off, someone who's forced to have sex while she's on her period or when she has a UTI, that is coerced, in my opinion. And you have Combs here, who has a history of violence directly towards Cassie. He has security. He has guns. That is enough force, in my opinion, for this to not be consensual sex, no matter how freaky it is between adults. And that's crossed the line to sex trafficking, in my opinion. And yet, Don Hughes, the government's expert, who testified about the psychology of abuse and why victims stay and why they don't seek help and why they don't report it. So I think that was very compelling testimony as well.
And then even as a former prosecutor, to this point, if you had to say something that Diddy's defense was doing well, what would you say they've done to this point?
I think Diddy's done a couple things well. One, they're using Cassie's own words against her. Those emails, those text messages, I thought they were damaging for the prosecution. If I were the government, I would have gotten a lot of that out on direct as well and just fronted that bad evidence for the jury. One thing they're doing that's interesting as well is they're crossing the victims. And actually they open with female attorneys and younger female attorneys. I mean, that's sort of the conventional wisdom. You don't want an older, overbearing male cross-examining a victim of sex abuse or sexual assault. So the fact that you have females making these arguments and saying that this was all consensual, that this was just physical violence, it wasn't sexual, I think the defense has done a good job there.
And then one more for you, Nima. Just in general, when it comes to communicating to a jury, because when I think of a mob boss, I think of Al Capone. Here's Sean Combs, and for a lot of people, he was someone they enjoyed his music. Brands like Ciroc, Sean John, I mean, these were very public-facing brands. How difficult is it as a prosecutor to take a juror and to get them to say, you know, a mob boss isn't just an Al Capone. It's not just a cartel, El Chapo type leader. This is Sean Combs. You may have known him through the media, and all of these public things you saw, actually, this was a criminal organization.
Like, it's not easy because it's not your typical case. What makes it more challenging is jurors love celebrities. And I've represented celebrities, I've sued celebrities. That's just the reality in this country. They tend to do well in both civil and criminal trials. Some of it is the fact that they have a lot of money and can hire the best and brightest lawyers in the country. I mean, Combs has assembled a dream team on his own. But if you want to prove racketeering, what you have to do is go through those elements and just say, listen, racketeering is not what you think it is. The racket, the enterprise, right? It just has to be some sort of loose organization. And you have Bad Boy Records, and you have all these individuals who are working for Combs. They're buying the baby oil, they're buying the lube, they're buying the condoms, they're setting up the hotel rooms with candles, right? They're setting up the freak offs. And what are they doing afterwards? They're cleaning everything up, right? The drugs, the oil all over the walls, the handprints everywhere. They're helping facilitate these illegal acts. Some of them would get prescription drugs for Combs, the Percocet. Some of them would witness and participate in trafficking the illegal drugs, right? They are all doing this at the direction of Sean Combs. So it doesn't have to be a mob boss who's ordering all of this. It can be anyone, including the head of a record company. That's enough for racketeering. And of course, you do have that pattern of racketeering activity, which just requires those 2 predicate acts within a 10-year period, which we have.
All right, we'll see what.
And you guys heard him. All the government has to prove is 2 predicate acts within the last 10 years, which at this moment in time, the government has proven it. So, not to say that this is a done deal, because the defense has not had their opportunity to present their case in chief. But overall, as I said, I'm giving my point to the government for today with bringing Capricorn Clark in for her testimony in this case. I'll keep you guys posted on tomorrow's happenings. I'm not sure if I'm gonna actually do it live as it happens, or if I'm just gonna stick to doing this late evening update. I'm starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, my time, daily. Not sure yet, but I'll keep you guys posted. At any rate, if you are not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing today. Be sure to set your notifications to all so that you're notified when I go live or add new content. I hope you guys enjoyed this update from day 10 of the trial of the United States versus Sean P. Diddy Combs. And I definitely think it's heating up. It's getting really interesting. I personally love trials and, following them and digging into the legal system, knowing as much as I possibly can about the law. So that's the whole reason I actually created this channel, because I have a real love for learning. Not saying I love the law, because there's quite a lot of things that need to be fixed within our judicial system, but I enjoy knowing as much as I possibly can about it so that I'm not, moving ignorant of the law, because ignorance does not absolve you of your responsibility to not break the law. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for everybody that joined me in the live chat. Replay gang, let's congregate in the comments. Let's talk about it. Any early predictions? Let me know what your thoughts are. I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, this is just a waste of time. They're wasting time. But I'm going to say it again. The devil is in the details. The devil is in the details. And I'm certain that once the prosecution, the government goes up for those closing arguments, they're going to highlight every single piece of evidence that they presented to prove their case against Sean P. Diddy Combs. They're going to give the jury a lot to think about. All right, guys, until next time, have a great morning, afternoon, or night based on wherever you're tuning in from, or based on whenever you catch the replay. Later.